At Daniel's engagement dinner, his fiancée Akari scrutinized my modest gift and dismissed my presence with a sneer. His mother openly questioned my worth, while Daniel stood silently by. As Akari whispered a cruel Japanese insult, thinking I wouldn't understand, a calm settled over me. I simply replied in perfect Japanese, watching her face drain of color. This is just the beginning. Please like, share, and let us know where you are listening from. The grand entrance to the Tanaka mansion was a symphony of polished marble and shimmering crystal. Eleanor Hayes stepped out of the modest taxi, her heart a drum against her ribs, and ascended the illuminated path. The air was cool, carrying the scent of expensive cigars and exotic flowers. Daniel's family home was less a house and more a monument to wealth, a stark contrast to her own quiet, book-lined apartment. She smoothed the skirt of her simple navy dress, a garment she considered elegant, but which suddenly felt painfully understated amidst the opulent surroundings. In her hand, she clutched a small, carefully wrapped box, a handmade ceramic bowl, a gift she had chosen with genuine thoughtfulness. Inside, the living room hummed with soft conversation and the clinking of glasses. Daniel, handsome and slightly anxious, spotted her immediately, his face lighting up with a relief that almost, but not quite, reached his eyes. Before he could fully embrace her, a figure emerged from the shadows of a towering floral arrangement. Akari Tanaka, Daniel's fiancée, moved with the effortless grace of someone born to such splendor. Her gaze swept over Eleanor, lingering for a fraction of a second too long on the navy dress, then dropping to the small package in Eleanor's hand. Akari's smile was a thin, perfectly sculpted line, more a formality than an expression of warmth. Her eyes, however, held a distinct, thinly veiled contempt that made Eleanor's stomach clench. "Eleanor, you made it," Akari purred, her voice like brushed silk. She extended a hand adorned with glittering rings, barely touching Eleanor's before retreating. "And what is this quaint little thing?" Her delicate fingers, tipped with perfectly manicured nails, plucked the ceramic bowl from Eleanor's grasp without an invitation. Akari turned it over once, her brow faintly furrowed, before placing it carelessly on a nearby antique side table, as if it were a misplaced coaster. The gesture stung, reducing Eleanor's heartfelt offering to an insignificant trinket. Daniel, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, quickly intervened. He placed a hand on Eleanor's back, a comforting but hesitant touch, and then turned his attention to Akari. "Mother," he began, his voice taking on a slightly strained deference, "Eleanor is here." He seemed to be seeking Akari's approval not just for the evening, but for Eleanor's very presence. It was a subtle act of triangulation, positioning Akari's opinion as the primary one, above even his own connection with Eleanor. Akari's parents, Hiroshi and Yumiko Tanaka, emerged then, drawn by their daughter's announcement. They were a formidable pair, exuding an aura of old money and quiet power. Hiroshi, with his impeccably tailored suit and silver hair, offered a polite, almost practiced smile. Yumiko, whose silk kimono seemed to shimmer with its own light, observed Eleanor with a gaze that was both polite and critically appraising. Her eyes, sharp and intelligent, seemed to undress Eleanor's perceived social standing layer by layer. There was no warmth, only an evaluating curiosity that made Eleanor feel like an exhibit rather than a guest. The evening unfolded with an awkward grace. During the cocktail hour, Eleanor found herself politely but firmly relegated to the periphery of the main conversations. She stood near a massive window overlooking a manicured garden, sipping a sparkling water while the Tanakas and their close family circle discussed real estate investments, international travel, and the latest luxury car models. Their discussions were peppered with Japanese phrases and cultural references, creating an invisible wall that Eleanor felt acutely. She tried to catch Daniel's eye, but he was engrossed in conversation with his father, nodding earnestly, occasionally glancing her way with a quick, apologetic smile that offered no real solace. Eventually, Yumiko Tanaka drifted toward Eleanor, her movement as silent as falling snow. "Eleanor, isn't it?" she asked, her voice soft but with an undertone of steel. "Daniel mentioned you work in a library. How intellectually stimulating." The compliment hung in the air, weighted with a subtle condescension that made intellectually stimulating sound like a euphemism for low-paying and obscure. Before Eleanor could formulate a reply, Akari joined them, her eyes sparkling with an almost mischievous glint. And I do hope you are comfortable with truly refined Japanese cuisine, Eleanor. Our chef is preparing some rather authentic dishes tonight. It's quite different from what one might be accustomed to. The implication was clear. Eleanor, with her simple background, would likely be out of her depth. Daniel, who had finally detached himself from his father, came to stand beside Eleanor. He slipped his hand into hers under the table, squeezing gently, a silent acknowledgement of her discomfort. Yet no words of defense or reassurance passed his lips. His gaze flickered between Eleanor and his mother, a silent plea for peace that he lacked the courage to enforce. The lack of vocal support felt like a small betrayal, a confirmation that in this family, his allegiance lay elsewhere. The conversation, thankfully, shifted to wedding plans. Akari, taking center stage, launched into an elaborate description of her vision for the ceremony and reception. She spoke passionately about incorporating her family's rich Japanese heritage into every detail, from the traditional kimonos to the ancestral rituals. This was ironic, Eleanor thought, given that the entire evening, apart from a few whispered interjections, had been conducted almost entirely in English. Her heritage seemed to be something Akari wielded as a weapon, a means of emphasizing her superiority in Daniel's privileged entry into her world. Hiroshi and Akari then delved into the intricacies of the guest list, their voices dropping slightly, but still audible in the hushed room. Eleanor overheard fragments about select invitees and maintaining a certain standard. Akari specifically mentioned needing to filter the list to ensure everyone was of a similar standing, then turned to her father, adding in a stage whisper, "We can't have anyone whose lifestyle might detract from the elegance." Her eyes flickered toward Eleanor, a clear, unmistakable hint that Eleanor was precisely the kind of person they intended to exclude from the future festivities. The humiliation burned, a hot flush spreading across Eleanor's cheeks. It was then, as the conversation seemed to swirl around her, slowly drowning her in its elitist current, that Akari leaned in closer to her parents. Her lips formed a delicate, secretive smile as she whispered something in rapid, fluid Japanese. The words were low, intended only for Hiroshi and Yumiko, but her eyes, sharp and triumphant, met Eleanor's for a fleeting second. Akari assumed Eleanor wouldn't understand, a smug certainty etched on her face. But Eleanor did understand, every single word. Akari had called her a miserable commoner, Mijime na Haman, unworthy of their presence, an embarrassment to Daniel. The insult, delivered with such casual cruelty, felt like a physical blow. A profound stillness settled over Eleanor. The burning humiliation receded, replaced by a cold, resolute calm. She met Akari's gaze, a small, almost imperceptible smile touching her own lips. In a voice that was perfectly modulated, clear, and utterly devoid of tremor, Eleanor replied in flawless Japanese, "Anata ga sugoi desu." You are splendid. You are magnificent. The effect was instantaneous and electrifying. Akari's triumphant smirk dissolved, her face draining of all color, leaving her pale and stunned. Her eyes widened, flicking frantically between Eleanor and her parents, who stared at Eleanor with expressions of shocked disbelief. Hiroshi's usually composed demeanor fractured, his jaw slack. Yumiko's sharp gaze softened into something akin to apprehension. The air crackled with unspoken questions, with the sudden, jarring realization that their carefully constructed world of superiority had been breached. Eleanor slowly rose from her seat, her movements deliberate and graceful. The ceramic bowl abandoned on the side table seemed to hum with silent defiance. She offered a slight bow, a gesture of politeness that now carried an edge of finality. "Thank you for the dinner," she said, her voice still calm, still in English, addressing all three Tanakas. "It has been enlightening." With that, Eleanor turned and walked towards the grand entrance, leaving behind the stunned silence and the wreckage of their assumptions. As the heavy doors closed behind her, a newfound calm, a quiet power, settled deep within her. The insistent chirping of her phone dragged Eleanor from a dreamless sleep. Sunlight was just beginning to filter through her apartment window, painting the worn carpet in soft hues. She stretched, feeling a peculiar lightness in her chest, a remnant of the quiet triumph from the previous night. She picked up the phone, noting Daniel's name flashing on the screen. and answered with a calm, even tone. Eleanor? What was that? What did you say last night? Daniel's voice, usually so measured, was tight with a barely controlled fury. It hit her like a cold splash of water, instantly dissipating the lingering peace. He sounded less like the man she knew and more like Akari's indignant echo. Eleanor paused, letting his anger simmer on the other end. Good morning to you too, Daniel, she replied, her voice steady. Before I tell you what I said, perhaps you should tell me what Akari told you I said. Or better yet, what she said first. There was a beat of silence, thick with confusion. What are you talking about? She said you spoke Japanese to them, that you were incredibly rude and just walked out, ruining the entire evening. My parents are livid, Eleanor. Livid! His voice escalated, laced with incredulity and frustration. You embarrassed us. You embarrassed Akari. Did Akari tell you what she said to me in Japanese, Daniel? Eleanor pressed, ignoring his accusations for now. Akari's Japanese isn't even that strong, Daniel scoffed, a dismissive wave in his tone even over the phone. She barely uses it outside of family holidays. She wouldn't have said anything cruel. She's not like that, Eleanor. You know her. Eleanor felt a familiar pang in her chest. You know her. She knew Akari all right. She knew the carefully constructed facade, the subtle barbs, the way Akari had systematically chipped away at her relationship with Daniel over the last 2 years. Oh, she's exactly like that, Daniel, Eleanor stated, her voice hardening with quiet conviction. She called me a miserable commoner to her parents, implying I was a poor, tacky old woman. And just before that, she made a point of calling me stupid for not understanding what they were discussing. All in Japanese, thinking I wouldn't comprehend a word. Another stunned silence stretched between them. Then Daniel's voice returned, laced with disbelief, almost a laugh. That's absurd, Eleanor. You don't even speak Japanese. How could you possibly know what she said? And why would she say something like that? He sounded genuinely baffled, his ignorance of her past, of her life before him, stark and painful. It was a clear demonstration of how little he truly knew about her, how much he had taken for granted. Akari had been very effective in isolating her, even from Daniel's own understanding. Eleanor closed her eyes, a wave of weariness washing over her. For 2 years, Akari had been a constant, insidious presence, a shadow stretching between her and Daniel. She had subtly undermined Eleanor's confidence, questioned her intelligence, and ridiculed her humble background in countless small ways, often disguised as playful banter or cultural differences. Daniel, blinded by Akari's charm and his family's approval, had never seen it. Or perhaps he simply hadn't wanted to. Daniel, Eleanor began, her voice softer now, tinged with a deep sadness. Do you remember when you were about 7 and you broke Mrs. Henderson's prize-winning rosebush playing soccer? A bewildered grunt came from the other end. What does that have to do with anything? You wanted to hide in your room, remember? You thought if you just avoided her, the problem would go away. But I made you go over there, apologize, and offer to help her replan it. I told you that real responsibility means facing your mistakes, not running from them. It means standing up for what's right, even when it's uncomfortable. She paused, letting the memory sink in. Do you think Akari is facing her actions? Or is she just running to you, expecting you to fix it? Eleanor challenged him. And more importantly, do you honestly believe Akari respects you, or your family, for that matter? She uses your name, your family's connections, but does she truly value anything beyond her own image and agenda? Daniel sighed heavily. Eleanor, you don't understand the pressure Akari is under. Her family is incredibly successful, very demanding, and her mother's side has a history with an incredibly intrusive mother-in-law, so she's sensitive about boundaries. She's just trying to navigate a difficult situation. He was grasping at straws, trying to paint Akari as a victim, to justify her cruelty with external pressures and vague family histories. And what about my place in this difficult situation, Daniel? Eleanor countered, a bitter edge to her voice. Where do I fit in the Tanaka's image-conscious world? Do I exist only as an acceptable accessory? Something to be hidden away when inconvenient? No, of course not, Daniel exclaimed, sounding genuinely distressed. But look, Eleanor, you could just meet her halfway. Maybe if you tried to fit in a little more, dressed a bit differently, developed some new interests that align with their social circles. Akari just wants everyone to get along. Eleanor felt a cold wave wash over her. It wasn't just Akari, it was Daniel too. He was asking her to erase herself, to become someone she wasn't, all to appease his new family. So, you're asking me to change who I am, Daniel? To change my appearance, my interests, my very essence, so I can be deemed acceptable by Akari and her parents? Her voice was dangerously quiet now. Because my quiet library job isn't prestigious enough? Because my handmade ceramic gift isn't opulent enough? Because my working class background is an embarrassment? She remembered Akari's endless subtle digs about her quaint apartment, her simple tastes, her lack of interest in high fashion or exclusive clubs. I won't disappear quietly, Daniel, Eleanor stated, her voice regaining its strength, a steel beneath the silk. I have a past, a history that runs deeper than any of you realize. A life I chose to keep private, not because I was ashamed, but because I valued authenticity over appearances, and I will not sacrifice that for anyone's approval. She didn't wait for his reply. Eleanor ended the call, the click of the button echoing in the sudden silence of her apartment. A deep breath filled her lungs, a sensation of release. The tremor in her hands was not of fear, but of a long-forgotten power stirring within her, awakening after years of dormancy. It felt exhilarating. The sun, now higher in the sky, cast stripes of light across Eleanor's living room floor. After hanging up on Daniel, she found herself walking towards a rarely touched corner of her small apartment. There, tucked away in the back of a closet, was a dusty cardboard box. Its tape was brittle with age, and the label, faded by time, simply read memories. It had been 23 years since she had last opened it, 23 years since she had deliberately sealed away a significant chapter of her life. With a sigh that carried the weight of years, Eleanor pulled the box out. Dust motes danced in the sunlight as she gently peeled back the ancient tape. Inside, layers of forgotten treasures awaited. Old letters tied with faded ribbons, a child's crayon drawings, and then, beneath a bundle of yellowed newspaper clippings, a stack of photographs. Her fingers trembled slightly as she picked up a particular one. It was a photograph of herself taken when she was 38. She stood in front of a sleek, modern Tokyo skyline, a woman transformed. Her usually soft features were sharper, her eyes alight with a confident, almost fierce intelligence. She wore a perfectly tailored charcoal business suit, her hair pulled back in a severe, elegant style. This was not the Eleanor who meticulously organized library shelves, nor the Eleanor who had just endured Daniel's hurtful call. This was Eleanor Sato, a woman of purpose and power. Beneath the photo, nestled among other relics, were several business cards, their edges slightly worn, but their gold-embossed lettering still crisp. Eleanor Sato, they proclaimed, Senior Translation Coordinator, Yamamoto Industries. The words seemed to hum with a forgotten energy. A wry smile touched Eleanor's lips. The irony was almost comical. Akari, with her broken Japanese and her smug, ill-informed insult, had no idea she had been speaking to someone who had not only mastered her native tongue, but had once commanded boardrooms in it, deftly navigating complex business negotiations and cultural nuances. Eleanor had been fluent enough to conduct entire corporate meetings, not just understand a petty whisper. The memories flooded back, sharp and vivid. Her life before Tokyo had been a struggle, a constant uphill battle. Richard, Daniel's father, had left her when she was 30, with a 5-year-old son and no college degree. The shock, the betrayal, had been immense. She remembered the gnawing fear, the constant worry about how she would provide for Daniel. She had taken every job she could find, waitressing, cleaning houses, even overnight shifts stocking shelves at a grocery store. The work was grueling, the hours endless, and the guilt she carried for not being able to give Daniel more was a heavy cloak she wore constantly. She tried to make up for it with unwavering love and unwavering presence, but the financial strain was always there, a persistent ache. It was during her waitressing shifts at a bustling San Francisco diner that she met Kenji Sato. He was a kind Japanese businessman who often ate alone, always with a polite smile and a keen interest in the world around him. He noticed Eleanor's quick wit, her sharp mind hidden beneath the weary demeanor of a single mother trying to make ends meet. He saw past the apron and the tired eyes, recognizing an untapped potential. One quiet evening, after her shift, Kenji approached her. "Eleanor-san," he began, his English impeccable, "I have noticed your intelligence. You have a keen mind for detail and a remarkable ability to anticipate needs. Have you ever considered a different path?" Eleanor, cynical and exhausted, had initially dismissed his words, but Kenji was persistent, gently encouraging. He spoke of business, of international relations, and eventually of the Japanese language. "It is a language of elegance and precision," he had explained, "and it opens many doors in the global market. I would be honored to teach you if you are willing to learn." For business. Eleanor had laughed then, a tired, disbelieving sound. "Me? Learn Japanese? I barely have time to sleep, Mr. Sato." But his genuine belief in her, a belief she hadn't felt from anyone in years, slowly chipped away at her doubts. He wasn't propositioning her or offering a handout. He was offering a tool, an investment in herself. After much deliberation, she accepted, and so began a period of relentless study. After her exhausting shifts, when Daniel was asleep, Eleanor would pore over textbooks, listen to Kenji's carefully recorded lessons, and practice pronunciation until her tongue ached. Kenji, a patient and insightful mentor, taught her not just the grammar and vocabulary, but the subtle cultural nuances, the unspoken protocols, the art of respectful communication. He taught her how to navigate the intricate social landscape of Japanese business, how to observe, to listen, to respond with wisdom and grace. It was a baptism by fire, but Eleanor, fueled by the desire for a better life for Daniel, absorbed it all like a sponge. 2 years later, Kenji presented her with an opportunity that changed the trajectory of their lives forever. "Eleanor-san," he announced, his eyes sparkling with pride, "Yamamoto Industries is expanding its international operations. They need an American liaison, someone who understands both cultures, who can bridge the gap. I have recommended you for the role of Senior Translation Coordinator. It would mean moving to Tokyo." The offer was staggering, a dream she hadn't dared to dream, a well-paying, prestigious position in a vibrant international city, a chance to truly provide for Daniel, to give him experiences she could only have imagined. But it also meant uprooting her son, taking him away from the only home he had ever known, from his friends and school. It was the most difficult decision of her life. Yet, as she looked at Daniel, then 10 years old, a bright, curious boy who deserved every opportunity, she knew what she had to do. They packed their meager belongings, sold what they couldn't take, and embarked on a journey to a new life, to a hidden past that would now, after all these years, begin to resurface. The first year in Tokyo was nothing short of brutal. The vibrant, bustling city, with its dazzling lights and ancient traditions, was a world away from the familiar comfort of San Francisco. Eleanor and Daniel, then a wide-eyed 10-year-old, arrived with a mixture of trepidation and hope. The initial excitement quickly gave way to the harsh realities of immersion. Every interaction was a challenge. The language which Eleanor had diligently studied was suddenly a living, breathing entity, far more complex and nuanced than any textbook had conveyed. Cultural misunderstandings were a daily occurrence, often leading to awkward silences or unintended offense. The sheer weight of expectation, both internal and external, pressed down on Eleanor. She was not just a new employee, she was an American liaison, expected to bridge a cultural divide she was only just beginning to comprehend. Eleanor threw herself into her work with a ferocity born of necessity and ambition. At Yamamoto Industries, she spent her days absorbing every detail, listening intently, and translating complex technical and business jargon. Her Japanese, already strong, rapidly improved through constant exposure and the pressure of real-world application. She discovered an innate talent for business translation, an ability to not only convert words but to convey their underlying meaning, their cultural context, and their strategic intent. She learned to read the room, to understand the subtle cues and unspoken agreements that govern Japanese corporate interactions. This proficiency quickly earned her the respect of her colleagues and superiors. Her salary, a testament to her growing value, began to climb steadily, slowly lifting the burden of financial anxiety that had plagued her for so long. While Eleanor navigated the intricate world of corporate Japan, Daniel adapted with a resilience that both amazed and humbled her. Children, she observed, were like sponges, absorbing new environments with an ease that adults often struggled to replicate. Within months, Daniel was conversing fluently with his schoolmates, picking up slang and cultural idioms that sometimes even stumped Eleanor. He embraced Japanese life wholeheartedly, developing a love for ramen, manga, and the quiet reverence of temple visits. He became her informal tutor, often correcting her pronunciation or explaining a cultural nuance she had missed. He was thriving, blossoming into a confident, bilingual, and culturally fluent young man, and seeing his joy eased much of Eleanor's own struggle. By the third year, Eleanor's position at Yamamoto Industries was firmly established. Her dedication, her sharp intellect, and her unparalleled linguistic skills had not gone unnoticed. She was promoted to Senior Translation Coordinator, a role that placed her at the heart of major international deals. She became indispensable, the crucial link between the Japanese executives and their Western counterparts. She traveled extensively, attending conferences in London, New York, and Berlin, representing Yamamoto Industries with an authority she never knew she possessed. The financial success she achieved was beyond anything she had ever dared to dream. The comfortable life she had always envisioned for Daniel was now a reality, built by her own hands and her own intellect. Amidst this whirlwind of professional triumph, a more personal transformation was quietly taking root. Kenji Sato, her mentor, her champion, remained a constant presence in her life. He was a man of quiet strength and profound kindness, always offering support, guidance, and a listening ear. He had seen her potential when no one else had, believed in her when she doubted herself, and gently nudged her towards a future she couldn't have imagined. Their relationship, built on a foundation of mutual respect, shared experiences, and a deep intellectual connection, slowly began to deepen. Eleanor found herself increasingly drawn to Kenji. His calm demeanor, his unwavering integrity, and his genuine warmth were a soothing balm after the intense demands of her corporate life. They shared quiet dinners, discussed complex business strategies, and explored the hidden corners of Tokyo together. She learned about his family, his aspirations, and his own quiet struggles. In his presence, Eleanor felt seen, truly seen, not just as a successful businesswoman, but as the woman she was beneath the professional facade. She realized with a startling clarity that both thrilled and terrified her that she was falling in love with him. It was a love born not of youthful passion or desperate need, but of deep admiration and genuine companionship, a love that promised a future far richer and more fulfilling than she had ever dared to hope for. If you're finding Eleanor's journey compelling, don't miss what happens next. Make sure to like this story, share it with your friends, and subscribe to stay updated. Your support means the world, and we're just getting to the heart of her incredible resilience. 5 years after her arrival in Japan, Eleanor found herself walking down an aisle once more. But this time her heart was full, buoyant with a love she had never thought possible. She and Kenji married in a beautiful ceremony that gracefully blended American and Japanese traditions. It was a day of profound joy and deep meaning. Daniel, a handsome and proud 13-year-old, stood tall beside her, his hand firmly in hers as he walked her towards Kenji, a silent testament to the bond they had forged as a family. Kenji, radiant in a traditional kimono, met them with a smile that encompassed all his love and devotion. It was a day Eleanor would forever cherish, etched in her memory as the pinnacle of her happiness. For 3 blissful years, their Tokyo home was a sanctuary of love, laughter, and intellectual companionship. Eleanor thrived both personally and professionally. Her career at Yamamoto Industries continued its upward trajectory, providing a financial security she had once only dreamed of. With Kenji by her side, she felt truly complete, loved, and respected. They explored Japan together, discovered shared passions, and built a life rich in meaning and connection. Daniel flourished under Kenji's gentle guidance, embracing him fully as the father figure he had always longed for. Their family was whole. Then tragedy struck with the sudden, brutal force of a tsunami. Kenji, seemingly vibrant and healthy, received a devastating diagnosis: pancreatic cancer. The news ripped through their lives like a cruel blade. leaving them reeling. 4 agonizing months later, Eleanor held his hand as he slipped away, the light dimming from his kind eyes. Her world, so carefully constructed, so full of love, crumbled around her. The silence in their beautiful Tokyo home became deafening, each corner echoing with memories of his presence. Daniel, then 16, was utterly devastated. Kenji had stepped into his life when he most needed a father, providing stability, wisdom, and boundless affection. To lose him so suddenly and so unfairly shattered the young man. Eleanor watched helpless as Daniel retreated into himself, grappling with a grief that felt too heavy for his young shoulders. In his final days, Kenji had expressed one clear, heartfelt wish. He held Eleanor's hand, his voice weak but firm. "My love," he whispered, "I want you to take Daniel back to America. He needs to heal, away from these painful memories. And you, Eleanor, you need to build a new future for both of you. Do not stay here out of obligation. Live and thrive." His words were a heavy burden, a testament to his selfless love, but also a command she knew she had to honor. Eleanor tried to resist. She threw herself into her work, seeking solace in the familiar demands of Yamamoto Industries, hoping that routine and ambition could numb the pain. But every hallway, every meeting room, every quiet corner of Tokyo seemed to whisper Kenji's name. And Daniel, despite her best efforts, struggled profoundly. His grades slipped, his once vibrant spirit dulled, and the joy that Kenji had brought into their lives seemed to have vanished with him. The city, once a symbol of their shared adventure, now felt like a mausoleum of their happiness. 6 months after Kenji's death, Eleanor knew she couldn't ignore his dying wish any longer. With a heavy heart, she made the agonizing decision to resign from her coveted position at Yamamoto Industries, sell their beautiful home, and move back to California. It was an uprooting, a second great severance, but this time driven by profound loss and the desperate need to provide solace for her grieving son. Back in California, she sought a quiet existence. The high-powered world of international business felt distant, irrelevant. What mattered now was Daniel. She found a modest, undemanding job at a local library, a stark contrast to her illustrious career in Tokyo. The quiet shelves, the familiar scent of old paper, and the rhythmic tasks of cataloging provided a much-needed balm for her weary soul. She wanted to be available for Daniel, to offer him a stable, calm presence as he navigated his grief. In this new, understated life, Eleanor gradually became the unremarkable woman Akari had perceived. She deliberately faded into the background, avoided discussions of her past, and kept her Tokyo life a closely guarded secret. It wasn't shame that drove her, but a deep, protective instinct. Talking about Kenji, about their life in Japan, brought a fresh wave of grief too painful to constantly confront. She let the world see a quiet librarian, a woman content with her simple life, while the vibrant, powerful Eleanor Sato remained hidden, a ghost of her former self. As she sorted through the dusty box of memories, a final item caught her eye. It was a framed letter, its paper crisp and official, a letter of recommendation from the CEO of Yamamoto Industries, praising her unparalleled professionalism, linguistic mastery, and strategic acumen. It was a powerful reminder of who she truly was, the woman Akari had so casually dismissed, the woman she had forgotten, but who was now, slowly, powerfully, beginning to reawaken. 3 days after the disastrous dinner at the Tanaka mansion, the quiet librarian Eleanor Hayes had shed her unassuming skin. The fury in Daniel's voice, the dismissive attitude of the Tanaka family, and Akari's cutting words had chipped away at the layers of grief and self-effacement she had built around herself. The old business cards, the letter of recommendation, and the photographs of Eleanor Sato had stirred something powerful and long dormant within her. She was no longer willing to be a quiet victim. Eleanor retrieved an old leather-bound address book from the same dusty memory box. Its pages, once filled with contacts from her Tokyo life, were now mostly relics. Her finger traced down a column of Japanese names until it landed on one: Takashi Morita. Takashi had been a sharp, ambitious junior colleague at Yamamoto Industries, someone she had mentored and respected. A quick online search confirmed her suspicion. Takashi had since founded his own highly successful international consulting firm, specializing in market intelligence and corporate due diligence. He was exactly the person she needed. With a deep breath, Eleanor dialed the number, feeling a thrill of anticipation mingled with apprehension. The familiar ring, then a crisp professional voice. Marita Consulting. Takashi speaking. Takashi-san, it's Eleanor Sato, she said, using her married name, the name that had resonated with respect and authority in Tokyo. There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end, then a burst of genuine warmth and surprise. Eleanor-san, my goodness, it's been so long. Where have you been? How are you? Eleanor allowed herself a brief, genuine smile. I'm well, Takashi. It's a long story for another time, but I'm calling you today for a rather delicate matter. She explained succinctly and without emotion that she needed confidential information on a specific family, the Tanakas. She was interested in their financial stability, the reputation of Hiroshi Tanaka's various business ventures, and any other relevant insights into their personal and professional standing. Takashi listened intently, his initial surprise giving way to his professional focus. Eleanor-san, you know our firm operates with the utmost discretion. This kind of deep dive, it will take some resources. I understand, Eleanor replied. I'm prepared to compensate you appropriately. This is important. Consider it done, Takashi said without hesitation. For you, Eleanor-san, it would be my honor. Give me 48 hours. I'll get back to you personally. The conversation ended, leaving Eleanor with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. The next day, Eleanor went to the library as usual, but her mind was far from the quiet shelves. She found herself drawn to the linguistics section, pulling out advanced Japanese business textbooks she hadn't touched in decades. She refreshed her memory on specific terminology, the nuances of corporate finance, and the delicate art of negotiation. The information flowed back to her easily, proof that the knowledge was not lost, merely dormant. The familiar rhythm of the Japanese characters, the complex grammar, felt like greeting an old friend. Exactly 48 hours later, her phone rang. Takashi's voice was grave, serious. Eleanor-san, I have the report. It's enlightening to say the least. He began to relay the findings and Eleanor listened, her heart pounding with a mixture of shock and dawning realization. Hiroshi Tanaka's empire, so outwardly impressive, was built on a foundation of shifting sand. His companies were heavily leveraged, burdened by significant debt due to a series of aggressive, ill-advised expansions. Several lucrative international contracts, the very ones Akari had boasted about during dinner, had not been renewed. The family's once unshakable financial stability was precarious, teetering on the edge of potential bankruptcy. And Yumiko-san's charity work? Eleanor prompted, remembering the subtle digs at her own modest life. Takashi chuckled, a dry, humorless tone. Her philanthropic endeavors are more about maintaining social positioning than significant giving. Large public donations to well-known organizations, but minimal personal involvement or substantial impact. Mostly for appearances, Eleanor-san. Then came the information about Akari. As for Akari-san, Takashi continued, she has no independent financial standing, no steady employment history of her own. She is entirely dependent on her parents. Her role as a consultant for her father is purely nominal, a title with no real responsibilities or income, designed to create an illusion of professional engagement. A cold, clear picture began to form in Eleanor's mind. Akari's disdain, her constant put-downs, her desperate emphasis on heritage and refinement all made sense now. The elaborate, expensive wedding Akari was planning wasn't just about pride, it was about securing her own financial future, leveraging Daniel's wealth and status before her own family's house of cards collapsed. Her relentless campaign against Eleanor wasn't just personal spite, it was a calculated effort to remove any obstacle, any challenge to her future husband's family resources. She needed Daniel's family money to shore up her own crumbling world. The revelation was a punch to the gut, but also a surge of invigorating clarity. Akari wasn't strong, she was desperate. Her cruelty stemmed from fear and insecurity. Eleanor thanked Takashi, promising to settle his invoice promptly, and hung up. But her journey of discovery wasn't over. One more loose end tugged at her memory. She remembered Kenji, ever pragmatic, encouraging her to open a separate savings account for her earnings in Japan. For a rainy day, he had said. She found the old account number in the bank's international contact. With a mix of trepidation and curiosity, she called. After navigating the complexities of international banking, speaking in fluent, practiced Japanese, she finally received the information. The numbers on the screen before her were staggering. Her forgotten savings account, untouched for all these years, held a substantial sum, 437,000. It was a sum accumulated from her years of hard work at Yamamoto Industries, a testament to her talent and Kenji's wise financial advice. Eleanor stared at the figure, a slow, powerful smile spreading across her face. She was not the poor, tacky old woman Akari had so casually dismissed. She was not a helpless woman, dependent on anyone. She was Eleanor Sato, and the sleeping giant had just awoken. The morning after her revealing phone calls, Eleanor called the library and, for the first time in years, called in sick. The lie felt liberating, a small act of rebellion against the quiet, unassuming persona she had cultivated. Instead of heading to her usual haven of books, she drove to the most upscale shopping center in the city, a place she hadn't visited in decades. Her first stop was a high-end boutique known for its impeccable tailoring and elegant designs. She worked with a personal shopper, shedding the last vestiges of her librarian wardrobe. She chose a meticulously tailored navy suit, its lines sharp and authoritative, a clear echo of the woman in the Tokyo photograph. She also selected a stunning burgundy silk cocktail dress, its rich color and sophisticated cut, a stark contrast to the modest navy dress Akari had so casually dismissed. Along with the key pieces, she acquired a complete new wardrobe, tasteful accessories, fine leather shoes, and a designer handbag. The cost was substantial, but the forgotten 437,000 in her Japanese account now felt like a war chest, not just a savings fund. Standing before the three-way mirror in the fitting room, Eleanor looked at her reflection. The woman staring back was no longer the tired, grieving widow, nor the unassuming librarian. Her shoulders were straighter, her chin held high. The subtle lines of age around her eyes now spoke of experience, not weariness. She saw Eleanor Sato again, the confident, powerful woman who had commanded respect in international boardrooms. A quiet smile touched her lips. She was back. Her next move was equally deliberate. She made another international call to Japan, this time to Daisuke Yamamoto, the current CEO of Yamamoto Industries and the son of her original mentor. His voice, when he answered, was as sharp and discerning as she remembered. "Daisuke-san, it's Eleanor Sato." Again, a beat of surprised silence, followed by genuine pleasure. "Eleanor-san, it is truly an honor to hear your voice. We often speak of you here. You were, without question, our most talented American colleague." His words were a balm, a reminder of her past achievements and the high regard in which she was held. Eleanor thanked him, then steered the conversation to her true purpose. Feigning casual interest, she inquired about Hiroshi Tanaka's company. "I'm looking into a small consulting project, Daisuke-san," she began, "and a name has come across my desk. Tanaka Holdings. I remember they had some dealings with your father's generation. I was hoping for some historical context, if you have a moment." Daisuke's tone shifted, becoming more cautious. "Ah, Tanaka Holdings. Yes, we did consider partnering with them many years ago, under my father's leadership. However, our due diligence raised significant concerns. Their financial stability was questionable, and their business practices, though aggressive, often bordered on the reckless. We ultimately decided to avoid any major collaborations." He paused. "My father, a very astute judge of character, felt their long-term prospects were not sound." Eleanor absorbed the information. It perfectly corroborated Takashi's findings, adding a layer of professional validation. Yamamoto Industries, a titan in its field, had actively avoided Hiroshi Tanaka's company. This wasn't just speculation. This was a well-informed, strategic decision by a respected industry leader. The pieces clicked into place. Akari's crucial error wasn't just underestimating Eleanor's intelligence or her command of Japanese. It was underestimating her entirely, based solely on outward appearances and her current, unassuming job title. Akari had been completely unaware of Eleanor's true identity, her formidable past, and the significant financial resources she possessed. The Tanakas had dismissed her as a miserable commoner, a nobody, while Eleanor had once operated in the same exalted circles, holding genuine power and influence. A quiet thrill ran through Alina. She realized she now held all the cards. She had the financial means, the professional connections, the intellectual prowess, and a comprehensive understanding of the Tanaka family's vulnerabilities. The game, which they had unwittingly started, was now hers to control. A few days later, a formal invitation arrived. Heavy cream cardstock, embossed with a delicate gold crest, announced the engagement party for Daniel Hayes and Akari Tanaka to be held at the exclusive Pacific Heights Country Club. The dress code was explicitly stated cocktail attire. That evening, Daniel called, his voice noticeably more conciliatory than their last conversation. "Mom, the invitation for the engagement party should be arriving soon. Are you coming?" He sounded tentative, perhaps expecting her to decline. "And if you wanted to, we could go shopping together for an outfit. I could help you pick something out." The implication was clear. He was trying to prevent another embarrassment. Eleanor smiled faintly into the phone. "That's very thoughtful, Daniel," she replied, her voice calm and assured. "But thank you, I've already taken care of it." For the next 2 weeks, Eleanor threw herself into preparation. She researched the guest list for the engagement party, familiarizing herself with the key players in San Francisco's elite society. She spent hours practicing her Japanese, not just for fluency, but for the specific formal phrases and nuanced expressions required in high-stakes social interactions. She polished her formal speaking skills, ensuring her voice carried authority and grace. She was not just attending a party, she was preparing for an event that would redefine her future and perhaps the future of the Tanaka family. The quiet librarian was gone. Eleanor Sato, dormant for too long, was fully awake and ready to play. The night of Daniel's engagement party dawned with an electric tension that only Eleanor seemed to feel. She spent the hours leading up to the event meticulously transforming herself. The burgundy silk cocktail dress draped elegantly, accentuating her renewed posture. Her hair was swept into a sophisticated updo, revealing the graceful line of her neck. From her jewelry box, she selected Kenji's pearl necklace, a subtle, elegant strand that whispered of a love lost but not forgotten. With a final glance in the mirror, she saw not just Eleanor Hayes, but Eleanor Sato, a woman poised and ready. When Eleanor stepped into the opulent ballroom of the Pacific Heights Country Club, a hush seemed to fall almost imperceptibly over the immediate vicinity. She moved with an aura of quiet command, her gaze sweeping over the glittering crowd with an effortless confidence that commanded respect. This was her arena now. She didn't rush to make an entrance. Instead, she found a discreet spot near a lavish floral arrangement, allowing herself to observe, to listen, and to choose her moment. The air hummed with hushed conversations and the clinking of champagne glasses, a perfect backdrop for the drama she was about to orchestrate. It wasn't long before Daniel spotted her. He navigated through the mingling guests, his eyes wide with a mixture of shock and admiration. His jaw literally dropped when he reached her, his initial words stumbling. "Mom, you look incredible." He recovered quickly, his chest swelling with an unfamiliar pride, and began enthusiastically introducing her to his friends and business acquaintances, something he had rarely done at social functions. Each introduction was a small victory, a reclaiming of her place. Then Akari appeared, gliding towards them, her confident smile fixed in place. But as her eyes landed on Eleanor, the smile faltered, a flicker of confusion and alarm replacing her usual self-assured poise. Eleanor, noticing Akari's barely concealed discomfort, offered a polite, almost saccharine smile. "Akari, my dear, you look absolutely radiant tonight," she said, her tone subtly ironic, hinting at a depth Akari couldn't quite grasp. Akari, recovering her composure, launched into an enthusiastic description of their extravagant wedding plans, detailing elaborate floral arrangements, a famous caterer, and a destination honeymoon. Eleanor listened patiently, a knowing glint in her eyes before remarking casually, "My, that sounds quite costly. I do hope everything goes smoothly for you both." The subtle jab about the expense hung in the air, a perfectly placed whisper into the mounting financial pressure Akari was under. Soon after, Hiroshi and Yumiko Tanaka approached, their expressions a careful blend of polite curiosity and residual annoyance. "Eleanor-san," Yumiko began, her voice still holding that delicate hint of condescension. Daniel tells us you still enjoy your quiet work at the library. How charmingly quaint. Eleanor smiled, a genuine warmth now in her eyes. Oh yes, Yumiko-san. The library is a wonderful place for quiet reflection. But before that, for about 8 years, I had quite a different career. I was in international business consulting, primarily based in Tokyo, working with some of Japan's largest corporations. Hiroshi and Yumiko exchanged a swift, surprised glance. Tokyo? Hiroshi murmured, his brow furrowed with curiosity. And which corporations were these, Eleanor-san? There was a challenge in his voice, an expectation that she would fumble, perhaps exaggerate. Eleanor met his gaze steadily. Well, for instance, I was a senior translation coordinator at Yamamoto Industries for several years. Then I did some extensive project work for Mitsubishi and Honda. My specialty was bridging cultural and linguistic divides in complex international mergers and negotiations. Her words were delivered with impeccable formal business Japanese, each syllable perfectly articulated, each phrase grammatically flawless. Hiroshi and Yumiko were stunned. Their faces, usually so composed, went pale, a mixture of shock and dawning apprehension washing over them. She had not only understood Akari's insult, she had once operated at a level far above their own perceived grandeur. Just then, a distinguished man with silver hair and a sharp suit approached, his face beaming. Eleanor-san, I knew I saw you. What a wonderful surprise. It was Daisuke Yamamoto, whom Eleanor had discreetly invited, timing his arrival perfectly. He greeted her with a warm, respectful bow and an even warmer smile. It's been too long, Eleanor Nakamura. You look as formidable as ever. He used her married name, the name that solidified her high-level past at Yamamoto Industries. A small crowd had begun to gather, drawn by the sudden shift in atmosphere, now deeply interested in Eleanor's unexpected connections and impressive history. Akari, observing from a distance, looked utterly confused and alarmed, her carefully constructed facade beginning to crack. Eleanor gracefully engaged the crowd, discreetly sharing edited anecdotes of her challenging, high-stakes consulting work, dropping names of influential figures and major deals. Each story, each mention of a prominent Japanese corporation, chipped away at Akari's composure. Finally, Akari, her face a mask of barely suppressed panic, confronted Eleanor directly. Why haven't you ever mentioned this incredibly impressive background before? She demanded, her voice tight. Eleanor met her gaze, a calm, knowing smile on her lips. You never asked, Akari. You simply assumed you knew everything about me. She paused, letting the words hang in the air. And speaking of assumptions, Akari, I also understood every word of your charming Japanese insult the other night. Mijime na haiman, was it? A miserable commoner. And I also know about your family's current financial distress. Hiroshi-san's companies are heavily leveraged, facing significant challenges, aren't they? Her voice dropped, becoming a quiet, devastating whisper. Yamamoto Industries, for instance, chose not to partner with your father's company precisely because of concerns about its instability and risky practices. Eleanor watched as Akari's face crumpled, the color draining from it entirely. Her eyes darted around, panicked, searching for an escape, for Daniel, for anyone to save her. But Daniel was surrounded by Eleanor's impressed new acquaintances, caught up in the glow of her unexpected reemergence. With a final cool gaze, Eleanor simply turned and walked away, leaving Akari standing alone amidst the opulent party, a queen whose crown had just been brutally snatched. Akari understood now. She had chosen the wrong opponent, underestimated the wrong woman. The harsh ring of her phone at 6 a.m., 3 days after the engagement party, jolted Eleanor awake. It was Daniel, his voice frantic, bordering on desperation. Mom, please, you have to come over. Akari's here. It's a mess. Eleanor dressed quickly, a sense of grim anticipation settling over her. When she arrived at Daniel's apartment, the scene confirmed his words. The usually immaculate space was in disarray. Papers were scattered across the coffee table, cushions askew, and in the center of the room, Akari sat hunched, her elegant cocktail dress from the party now rumpled, her face streaked with tears, a picture of absolute despondency. What happened? Eleanor asked, her voice calm, cutting through the thick tension in the air. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, looking utterly overwhelmed. My father, Hiroshi-san, he lost two major contracts yesterday. Two of his biggest potential Japanese partners suddenly pulled out. They cited concerning things about the company's stability that they'd apparently heard through the grapevine. It's really bad, Mom. He's furious. Akari lifted her head, her eyes blazing with raw fury, directed squarely at Eleanor. You did this. This is your fault. You sabotaged us, she shrieked, her composure completely shattered. You spread rumors, didn't you? You deliberately ruined everything. Eleanor met Akari's accusations with an unwavering gaze. I did not sabotage anyone, Akari, she stated, her voice even. I merely protected mine. Your family's business practices, as it turns out, were unsustainable. I simply ensured that relevant parties were aware of the facts before making potentially ruinous decisions. She then turned to Daniel, her expression softening slightly. Akari, Daniel, I had a former colleague, Takashi Morita, research your family's finances. He's a highly respected international consultant. The findings were deeply concerning. Your father's company was and still is on the verge of bankruptcy. I also made a courtesy call to Daisuke Yamamoto, the CEO of Yamamoto Industries, merely inquiring about Tanaka Holdings. He confirmed Yamamoto Industries had already identified your father's instability years ago and avoided any significant partnerships. Daniel stared at Eleanor, his face a mixture of shock, confusion, and dawning realization. Eleanor, what are you talking about? Yamamoto Industries? What connection do you have to them? Eleanor took a deep breath. Daniel, she began, looking directly into her son's eyes. There's a part of my life I've kept hidden from you, mostly to protect you from more grief after Kenji died, and partly because I needed to hide from my own pain. When we moved to Tokyo, it wasn't just for a fresh start. I worked as a senior translation coordinator for Yamamoto Industries. I spent 8 years in Japan building a highly successful career in international business consulting. I was financially independent, respected, and thriving. I married Kenji Sato, a wonderful man who saw my potential. He was your only true father figure, Daniel. She paused, her voice thick with emotion. I gave it all up, came back to California, and took that quiet library job because Kenji's dying wish was for us to heal, and I needed to be fully present for you, to help you through your grief. I needed to escape the constant reminders of my life with him, and I needed to shield you from any more upheaval. Daniel was utterly stunned. His mother, the quiet librarian, had been a successful, high-powered businesswoman, wealthy, married to a respected Japanese man who had been a father to him. You were wealthy, you were successful. You just let me think you were just a library worker? He stammered, his mind reeling from the revelation. He recalled his dismissive comments, his pride in Akari's family, his casual acceptance of his mother's unassuming life. Mom, I am so sorry, he whispered, his voice thick with profound regret. For everything I said, everything I thought, for letting Akari's words twist my judgment. I never should have let her influence me. I should have trusted you. Akari, seeing her carefully constructed world collapse, finally broke down completely. My family were almost bankrupt, she sobbed, her voice raw. My parents were pressuring me. This marriage, Daniel, it was supposed to save us. It was our only hope. Eleanor looked at her, a profound sadness in her eyes. I understand, Akari. Desperation can drive people to do terrible things. Daniel, his own shock now mixed with anger, turned to Akari. So you were marrying me for my money? For my family's money? This entire engagement was a charade to save your family from financial ruin? Akari could only nod, tears streaming down her face. Daniel's face hardened. He looked from Akari to Eleanor, then back to the crumpled woman on the floor. With a decisive movement, he slipped the engagement ring from his finger and placed it gently on the coffee table. I can't do this, Akari. I can't marry you. I need truth, not a transaction. Akari, her face contorted with rage and despair, looked up at Eleanor. If you just stayed quiet, she spat, stayed in your place, none of this would have happened. Eleanor met her gaze, her voice radiating quiet strength. A person's place, Akari, is not determined by others' expectations or by their limited perceptions. It is determined by their character, their choices, and their own strength. It's a place you earn, not one you are given or confined to. The raw truth of her words hung in the air. Eleanor turned to Daniel, who stood before her, his head bowed, tears in his eyes. He reached out and grasped her hands. "Mom, I am so sorry. I let you down. I didn't trust you. I was so blind." Eleanor pulled him into a warm, forgiving embrace. "It's all right, Daniel. We all make mistakes. What matters is what we learn from them." 6 months later, Eleanor was back in downtown Tokyo. Not as a grieving widow, nor as a quiet librarian, but as a thriving independent consultant, once again working on high-level projects, often collaborating with her former colleagues at Yamamoto Industries. The sleek, modern city felt like coming home. Her phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. "Just heard about your new project, Mom. So proud of you. Love you." A moment later, another message popped up, this one utterly unexpected, from Yumiko Tanaka. "I just finalized my divorce from Hiroshi. Your words resonated more than you know. Perhaps we could talk sometime." Eleanor smiled, a genuine, profound sense of peace settling over her. She reflected on her journey, the pain and the triumph, the quiet sacrifices and the powerful reclamations. She was a devoted mother and a brilliant professional, her two identities now harmoniously intertwined. She walked through the bustling streets of Ginza, her tailored suit moving with an easy elegance, Kenji's pearls gracing her neck. She was on her way to meet new clients, her mind already anticipating the complexities of their business. Kenji Sato's wisdom echoed in her heart. True power comes not from choosing one world over another, but from moving between them with integrity and without losing oneself. As she entered the exclusive restaurant, the hostess greeted her warmly, a respectful bow acknowledging her presence. Eleanor found her reserved table by the window, a subtle sense of accomplishment in every step. She had earned her place, not just here, but in her own life, with unwavering strength and quiet dignity. And she knew with absolute certainty that she would never let anyone take it away again.